Hey friends. So I've had kind of a philosophical, not so much thought experiment as internal inquiry going on over the last couple of days. And it was sort of sparked by a reminder. I'm reading this book on parenting called Positive Discipline. Fantastic book. I've talked about it on the post in the past. And something sparked for me that really kind of was just, it wasn't in the book as much as it was just like the context of thinking about parenting and my role as a parent, my relationship to my daughter. And the fact that at her age, you know, and even younger and probably continuing for several more years, she's so impressionable that my conduct, my behavior, and as the role that I play in her life, which is literally, you know, at least as far as her biological and psychological and emotional reality is concerned, I'm keeping her alive. Myself and Katie, we are her parents. She's dependent on us for survival. So all of the responses that she gets from us, all of that, every aspect of our interaction carries a tremendous weight and creates a significant imprint upon her in the form of, this is how the world works. This is how love is expressed. This is how I can get what I want. This is an effective way to get what I want. This is a less effective way to get what I want. If I do X, they will pay attention to me. They will love me. They will give me blah, 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 right? It's heavily important stuff. It feels like her life depends on it, because it does, you know. We all know she's going to be taken care of, and but as that young being, your sense of survival is bound up in these parents who, for all intents and purposes, might as well be gods. Your parents' powers at that age might as well be divine. You're essentially omnipotent, and one of the ways this manifests is in Annalise constantly wanting to do things like a big girl or like an adult. You know, it's all I can do to get her to let me watch her practice violin, because big girls and adults don't need anybody watching them to play violin. So don't watch me, Papa. And it's like, well, but there are phases, and there's phases of evolution and learning and teacher relationships, and it's all going swimmingly. But there are these very clear markers of, I want to grow into my own power. And so, but something about this notion that a parent is essentially a god to a child, not literally, but as far as their perceptions go, we're sort of like deciding for them, consciously or unconsciously, how they're going to see the world, how they're going to perceive love, how they're going to perceive themselves, identity, belonging, significance, meaning, value, all of that. We're basically like, we have the power to program a human, and we're doing it whether we think we are or not. It's not that we have the power and we use it. It's that that's what we are doing by being the parent to a child like that. That's literally the work we're doing every day, whether we're aware of it or not, whether we're doing it consciously or intentionally or obliviously. It's what we're doing. And somehow this in my mind, you know, it's almost like, you know, because the philosopher Kant, the sort of centerpiece of his ethics was what he called the categorical imperative. And the categorical imperative basically states that in order to be ethical, in order for behavior to be ethically defensible, we should, in every situation, act in such a way that the action we take in these circumstances could be turned into a universal maxim for all behavior in all such circumstances. So anytime I want to make a moral action, I want to make an action and have it be morally defensible, I need to be able to say, in every possible other set of circumstances like this one, that is the same as this set of circumstances, this action would be the correct action. It's kind of his litmus test for moral action. Now, it's been completely debunked. It was debunked by utilitarians who started to say, well, but what if, they started to question, well, what if there are just tiny, slight differences in circumstances, and that means that the effect of the action is no longer the same. And then more recently with more structuralist, postmodernist philosophers, they started to realize, hey, circumstances are a set of contexts that are infinitely extendable and completely unknowable. So there is no such thing as a given set of circumstances in which universally this action will always be the same. Every single time an action takes place, it takes place in a inherently different context, because every single iota, every moment, every nanosecond of existence is a completely new cascade of contexts. So it's not the greatest ethical system to determine how, morality from. But it is oddly related to parenting, because we're kind of programming another human being that this is how things work. In every set of circumstances like this is how you act. So it's interesting, because it's almost like Kant's categorical imperative was like that level of thinking, like that level of mind development, produced this moral system. But it feels weirdly like when I'm interacting with Annalise, or when I'm interacting as a parent, I have this sense like I'm teaching her categorical imperatives. I'm teaching her that this is how things work, and you see evidence of that in her behavior. She's a young person. She's taking something on. She's seeing how something works in a given circumstance, and then she's going and trying it out in the next moment or in the next circumstance. There's a kind of constant integrating and experimenting and taking in and reaching out, and it's going on constantly. And so back to my original kind of sense that as a parent, you're almost like, willingly or unwillingly, we're almost like divine beings. We're perceived as having power way, and eventually you grow up and you're like, oh, my parents aren't gods. What was I talking about? The latest, about like age 13. You're like, I thought you were gods. You guys are idiots. You're morons. And then for the next 10 years, that's maybe how you feel. Maybe not quite 10 years. Hopefully not 10 years. Oh my God. Deep breath. My point is, where I was going with all this, is that I start to see my own action and my own interaction in a kind of heightened way when I start to understand. When I realize that if my daughter gets frustrated, and she expresses something, or she, as I was talking about on my post yesterday, I'm not going to recap it, but there's a positive discipline as an approach has delineated certain what they call mistaken goals that kids will attempt to achieve because they think that that's how you get belonging and significance and love or whatever, and they're mistaken goals because they essentially can't be fulfilled. They actually, you never get, there's no there. That behavior And that mistaken goal will never actually create the feeling of genuine sort of grounded connection, power, autonomy, community, significance, and belonging that a kid is looking for. But the way I respond to her behavior is actually teaching her the principles of the universe as she knows it, whether or not it's true, right? What I'm teaching her may or may not be true. My response is just my response. But as far as she's concerned, my response is the response of the Father who's responsible for my life. So it really makes me ask the question, which is both incredibly humbling and at the same time sounds like you have delusions of grandeur, but ask the question, what kind of God am I being? If my behavior were responsible for programming how the universe looks, how the universe works, what kind of universe would we be living in? What kind of God would I be? What is the meaning of my actions? In the context of someone who's going to take them as sort of absolute truth for at least a few more years. Because it really makes you look. It really makes you look and go, is that what I mean? Is that what I want? Is that the universe if I were let's say I were creating a universe in the mind of another human being, is this the universe I want to create? It's big. It puts it, and I don't mean to overblow it or to sort of like obsess over it, but I think acknowledging the level of imprinting and the level of impact that our actions are having as parents is a good thing. We're gonna slip up. We're gonna be tired one day and lose our patience, or whatever is gonna happen. There's no like perfect standard we're trying to hit, and at the same time remembering the level of how much of an impact we're having upon another human being, and by extension upon the whole world through that human being. It's big, and it just makes me appreciate kind of appreciate, okay, let's do this consciously. Let me do this. Let me try and be awake as I'm responding to behavior that might be driving me nuts, or that, whatever it is, maybe not driving me nuts, maybe just whatever, but but it tends to be quite a wake-up call to ask that question. If I were a God, how would I be doing? Yeah. So that's where I've arrived today on Tuesday. Thanks for watching, folks. Appreciate you. Much, much love. Have a wonderful day. I'll see you soon.